Rain pelted against the conference room windows of Morgan and Associates as Adam Bennett stared at his watch for the third time in 5 minutes. 9:42 a.m. 42 minutes late. His trembling hands struggled to organize the blueprints scattered across the mahogany table. The Peterson project, his last chance to prove he could still function in this firm, was quickly unraveling before his eyes. "Mr. Bennett?" His assistant Rachel stood at the doorway, her expression a mixture of concern and resignation. "They're waiting in the main conference room." Adam nodded, gathering his materials. "Tell them I'll be there in 2 minutes." As he hurried down the corridor, Sarah's face flashed through his mind, her last smile, captured in the rear-view mirror seconds before the truck appeared. He stumbled, catching himself against the wall. "Not now," he whispered, pressing his palms against his temple. "Please, not now." The conference room fell silent as he entered. Thomas Morgan, the firm's senior partner, checked his Rolex with deliberate slowness. "Nice of you to join us, Adam," Thomas said, his voice carrying that edge of disappointment that had become all too familiar. "Shall we begin?" Adam connected his laptop to the projector, his hands still shaking. The 3D rendering of the cultural center loaded slowly, too slowly. He could feel the client's impatience growing with each passing second. The concept revolves around the integration of... The image flickered and died. Adam tapped frantically at the keyboard, but the screen remained blank. His phone vibrated in his pocket. The caller ID showed his father's nursing service. "Not now. Not during this presentation. Perhaps we should reschedule," Mrs. Peterson suggested, already gathering her belongings. "No, please," Adam's voice cracked. "I can fix this. Just give me a moment." Thomas stood up, straightening his tie. "I think we've all seen enough. Mrs. Peterson, Mr. Peterson, allow me to walk you out. We'll have a new project lead assigned by tomorrow." The room emptied quickly, leaving Adam alone with his failed presentation and spinning thoughts. His phone buzzed again, the nursing service's third call. When he finally answered, the news hit him like a physical blow. His father had skipped his medication again, becoming combative with the staff. "Mr. Bennett, we need you to come immediately. Your father's condition is deteriorating." After the call, Thomas reappeared in the doorway. "Adam, we need to talk." "Thomas, I know what you're going to say." "Do you?" Thomas closed the door behind him. "Because 6 months ago, you were my best architect. Now, I barely recognize you." Adam stared out the window at the rain-soaked city. "I just need more time." "Time isn't the issue, Adam. You need help. Professional help." Thomas placed a hand on his shoulder. "Take some leave. Get yourself together." Later that afternoon, at his father's doctor's appointment, Adam discovered the full extent of the deception. Months' worth of heart medication, found hidden in various places around his father's house. "Your father's condition is critical," Dr. Martinez explained. "Without consistent medication, we're looking at a severe cardiac event." The day ended with Adam sitting alone in his office, long after everyone else had gone home. The building's silence pressed in around him as he stared at Sarah's photo on his desk. His hands found the orange pill bottle in his drawer, untouched for weeks. The last drops of daylight faded from the window as Adam's head sank into his hand, and the sound of his quiet sobs echoed through the empty office. The morning routine had become a choreographed dance of guilt and obligation. Adam checked his father's pill organizer, counted the medications twice, and watched as Robert reluctantly swallowed each one. "I'm not a child, Adam," Robert grumbled, pushing away the water glass. "I managed just fine before your mother died, and I managed just fine after." "Did you?" Adam picked up a stack of unopened envelopes from the coffee table. "Then what are these?" "Bills. Dozens of them. Some marked Final Notice in angry red letters. Adam's hands trembled as he tore open envelope after envelope, revealing the extent of his father's financial negligence. "It's nothing," Robert waved dismissively. "Just a temporary setback." "Temporary? Dad, you haven't paid the property tax in 3 months." Adam ran his fingers through his disheveled hair. "Why didn't you tell me?" "The same reason you don't tell me about those pills in your briefcase," Robert shot back. "We all have our secret." The silence that followed was deafening. Adam retreated to the home office, Sarah's old workspace, still untouched since the accident. Her coffee mug remained on the desk, a faint lipstick stain preserved on its rim. He opened his laptop, determined to salvage something from the Peterson project. His phone buzzed. "Thomas, "The Petersons are giving us one more chance," Thomas said without preamble. "Next Tuesday. Don't make me regret this, Adam." "I won't. I just need—" "What you need is to prove you can still do this job." The line went dead. Adam stared at the blank screen, his reflection a ghost in the darkness. The doorbell's sudden ring startled him. Thomas stood on the porch, rainwater dripping from his umbrella. "We need to talk, and you're not answering your phone." In the kitchen, Thomas studied Adam over a cup of coffee. "The board met this morning, and you have until the Peterson presentation. After that," Thomas placed an envelope on the table. "Or, this is courtesy, Adam. Take the leave of absence voluntarily." "I can't afford a leave of absence," Adam said quietly. "Dad's bills are not your only responsibility." Thomas leaned forward. "Sarah's been gone for 8 months. When are you going to—" "Don't," Adam's voice cracked. "Just don't." After Thomas left, the argument with Robert was inevitable. "You're killing yourself trying to save me," Robert shouted, his face reddening dangerously. "Just like you killed yourself trying to save her." "Dad, your heart, to hell with my heart. You think I don't see you, drowning in guilt over Sarah, over me?" Robert's hand clutched his chest. "You're not living, son. You're just existing." Adam fled to the attic, seeking escape. Instead, he found boxes of old photographs. His mother's smile, Sarah's laugh, moments frozen in time. One photo caught his eye. His parents at the groundbreaking of their first house, young and full of dreams. The night stretched endlessly as Adam sat in his office, surrounded by failed designs and fading memories. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, promising another storm. On his desk, Sarah's coffee mug caught the light of his desk lamp. That last trace of lipstick, a reminder of everything he'd lost, and everything he still stood to lose. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. Adam sat in his parked car outside the office, watching sheets of water cascade down his windshield. The clock on his dashboard read 11:42 p.m., another late night of failed attempts to resurrect the Peterson project. His phone lit up with a missed call from the nursing service. He'd check on his father later. Right now, he couldn't face another reminder of his failures. Lightning split the sky as he pulled out of the parking lot. Through the blur of his wipers, something caught his eye. A figure huddled beneath the awning of the closed coffee shop across the street. "Not my problem," he muttered, but his foot eased off the accelerator. Another flash of lightning illuminated the scene. The figure, a young woman, clutched something to her chest, something small, moving. Adam's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He'd driven past enough problems lately, made enough excuses. He pulled over. The woman flinched as his car door slammed. Up close, she looked barely 20, her dark hair plastered to her face by the rain. The bundle in her arms whimpered. "Are you—" Adam started. "Or, we're fine," she cut him off, turning slightly away, but her voice trembled as much as her body. The baby began to cry. "Look," Adam said, keeping his distance. "There's a shelter 3 blocks from here. I can—" "No shelters." Her response was immediate, sharp with fear. We can't go back there." Something in her tone made Adam pause. He recognized that edge of desperation. He'd heard it in his own voice often enough lately. I'm Adam," he said softly. "The baby needs to get warm." She studied him through strands of wet hair, weighing survival against trust. "Stella," she finally offered. "And this is Lucy." The baby's cries grew stronger. "There's a diner around the corner," Adam suggested. They'll call someone." Stella clutched Lucy tighter. "They always call someone." Another crack of thunder made them both jump. Lucy wailed louder. "Ah, Jesus," Stella whispered, bouncing the baby gently. Please stop crying." Adam found himself reaching for his keys, the ones to his father's old house. The place had stood empty since Robert's move to assisted living, preserved like a museum to better days. "I have somewhere," he heard himself say. "No questions asked." Stella's eyes narrowed. "Why would you help us?" Adam looked at Lucy, then back at the storm. Because someone should have helped me when I needed it." The drive was silent except for Lucy's occasional whimpers and the rhythmic sweep of wipers. Stella sat rigid in the passenger seat, one hand always on the door handle. "That man," she said suddenly, staring straight ahead, "at the shelter, he said he was just checking on the babies." Her voice cracked, but his hands— Adam's grip tightened on the steering wheel. They pulled up to the dark house on Maple Street. It looked smaller than Adam remembered, sadder somehow. "It's not much," he said, fumbling with the keys, "but it's dry, safe." Inside, dust sheets draped the furniture like shrouds. Adam found some old towels in the linen closet, clean despite their musty smell. Stella wrapped Lucy in one, her defensive posture softening slightly as the baby's cries subsided. "One night," she said firmly. Then we'll go." Adam nodded, leaving the keys on the counter. Through the window, he watched their reflections in his rearview mirror until the rain swallowed them completely. Dawn brought clarity and regret. Adam sat in his car outside his father's house, staring at the empty spot where his spare keys should have been. "What the hell was I thinking?" he muttered, turning onto Maple Street. The house looked different in daylight, less threatening, more accusatory. He parked a block away, scanning the quiet neighborhood for any signs of suspicion. His key scraped in the lock. Inside, the air felt different, disturbed. A blanket lay folded on the couch. In the kitchen, an empty baby formula can sat in the trash. "Hello?" he called softly, hesitating at the foot of the stairs. No answer. Upstairs, he found them in his old bedroom. Stella slept curled around Lucy, one hand protectively draped over the baby. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and in sleep, she looked even younger. Adam retreated quietly, his mind racing. He needed a plan. Supplies, at least. The nearest grocery store opened early. He filled a cart with essentials: diapers, formula, bread, soup. The cashier raised an eyebrow at his selections. "New dad?" she asked cheerfully. Something like that," he mumbled. His phone buzzed. Rachel from the office. "Where are you? The contractor meeting started 10 minutes ago." "Cover for me," he said. "Family emergency." It wasn't entirely a lie. Back at the house, Stella stood in the kitchen. Lucy balanced on her hip. She tensed at his entrance. "I brought some things," Adam said, setting down the bags. "We're not staying." But her eyes lingered on the diapers. "Just take what you need." He pushed the bags toward her. "Please." Lucy reached for a box of crackers, her tiny fingers grasping air. "She hasn't eaten since yesterday," Stella admitted quietly. "Then stay, just until you figure things out." A car door slammed outside. They both froze. Adam peered through the curtain, just the neighbor getting their mail. Still, his heart raced. "Does anyone know we're here?" Stella's voice shook. "No, and it'll stay that way." His phone buzzed again. His father. "Where are my spare keys?" Robert demanded. "The nurses can't find them." "I must have taken them by mistake," Adam lied, watching Stella feed Lucy. "I'll bring them back tomorrow." "You're hiding something," Robert said. You always were a terrible liar." After hanging up, Adam found Stella in the living room, studying old family photos. "Your wife?" she asked, pointing to Sarah's picture. "Was?" The word still felt wrong in his mouth. Lucy babbled, reaching for the frame. For the first time, Adam saw Stella smile. She was beautiful. "Yes," Adam said. She was. That evening, returning to his empty apartment, Adam felt something he hadn't experienced in months: purpose. It terrified him. His phone lit up with messages. Thomas about the missed meeting, Rachel about the contractors, his father about the keys. But all he could think about was the smile, brief but real, that had transformed Stella's face, and how, for just a moment, the house on Maple Street hadn't felt like a museum of grief. Robert Bennett held the spare key in trembling hands. On his coffee table, a used napkin from the local diner lay crumpled, evidence of Adam's lie about having lunch at home. "Drive me to the house," he commanded the caregiver. "Mr. Bennett, your son specifically said?" "My house, my rules." Robert's voice carried the authority of a man who'd spent decades making decisions. "Now." The drive was tense. Robert's jaw clenched tighter with each passing block. The caregiver kept glancing at him through the rearview mirror, clearly conflicted between duty and orders. They pulled up to the house just as the porch light flickered on. Through the window, Robert saw movement, a shadow that didn't belong. "Wait here," he ordered, stepping out before the caregiver could protest. Inside, Stella was singing softly to Lucy, a lullaby half remembered from her own childhood. The front door's sudden opening shattered the peace. "Who the hell are you?" Robert's voice boomed through the house. Stella clutched Lucy tighter, backing toward the kitchen. Dad?" Adam's voice came from the driveway. He'd arrived for his evening check-in, just in time to see his father's car. "Dad, stop! You gave her the keys!" Robert advanced into the house. "To my house?" Your mother's house? Mr. Bennett, please, Stella started. Shut up. Robert's face reddened dangerously. You little thief, taking advantage of my son. She's not… Adam tried to intervene. 8 months, Robert wheeled on his son. 8 months since Sarah, and this is how you replace her. With some street trash and her… The word never came. Robert's hand flew to his chest, his next breath catching sharply. Dad? Adam's anger evaporated into fear. Robert's legs buckled. The thud of his collapse echoed through the house. Call 911! Adam knelt beside his father, panic freezing his thoughts. But Stella was already moving. Lucy secure in her carrier, she dropped to Robert's side with practiced efficiency. Help me turn him, she commanded. Carefully, her hands moved with surprising confidence, checking pulse, breathing, position. 2 years on the streets, she explained, responding to Adam's unasked question. You learn things fast. The ambulance arrived in minutes that felt like hours. Robert's color had improved slightly under Stella's care, but his eyes remained closed. You saved him, Adam said quietly as they watched the EMTs work. Maybe, Stella replied. But this changes everything. The emergency room's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across Adam's face as he paced. The doctor's words blurred together. Stroke, lucky, immediate response, critical hours ahead. His phone buzzed incessantly. The office, the contractor, the world that seemed so important this morning now felt distant, irrelevant. A nurse appeared with update forms. At family only past this point, she said, eyeing Stella. She stays, Adam said firmly. Then, softer, please. Hours crept by. Lucy slept in her carrier while Stella dozed in the uncomfortable waiting room chair. Adam watched them both, his world tilting on its axis. Dawn was breaking when Robert finally opened his eyes. The girl, he whispered, his words slightly slurred. Where? She saved your life, Dad. Robert closed his eyes again. A tear slid down his weathered cheek. In the hallway, Adam's phone lit up with a message from his firm's PR department. Someone had seen something. Questions were being asked. The morning sun streamed through the hospital windows as Adam watched his father sleep, knowing nothing would ever be the same. The office hummed with barely contained gossip. Adam could feel it in the stares that followed him down the hallway, in the conversations that died when he entered the break room. Living in his father's house, some homeless girl, complete mental breakdown. Rachel intercepted him before he reached his office. Thomas needs to see you. Now. The conference room felt colder than usual. Thomas sat surrounded by printouts of local news websites, each featuring variations of the same story. Prominent architect's mystery house guest. Care to explain? Thomas pushed one article forward. Adam scanned the headline. No names, but enough details to make his stomach clench. It's complicated. Everything's complicated with you lately. Thomas leaned back. The Peterson meeting is tomorrow. I know, You missed 3 contractor meetings this week. My father had a stroke. And you have a homeless woman living in his house. Thomas's voice softened slightly. Adam, what are you doing? Before Adam could answer, his phone vibrated. The hospital. I have to take this. In the corridor, he pressed the phone to his ear. Robert was agitated, demanding to see him. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and fear. Robert lay propped up, his face still drooping slightly on one side. She's still there, isn't she? He asked as soon as Adam entered. Yes. Why? Adam sank into the visitor's chair. Because she needed help. Like Sarah needed help. The words hung heavy between them. That's different. Is it? Robert's good hand clenched the blanket. You couldn't save Sarah. You can't save everyone, son. I'm not trying to… Mr. Bennett? A reporter stood in the doorway, notebook in hand. Just a few questions about your father's condition and your house guest. Security removed the reporter, but the damage was done. Adam's phone lit up with missed calls from the office. At the house, he found Stella packing Lucy's few belongings. Don't, he said from the doorway. I saw the news sites. She didn't look up. They're calling me a squatter, a con artist. They don't know you. Neither do you. But her hands stopped moving. Lucy crawled across the floor, reaching for a dust-covered toy truck. Adam's, from decades ago. I had a life once, Stella said quietly. Before everything, before him. Adam sat on the floor, watching Lucy play. Tell me, I was in college, art history. Her laugh was hollow. Then my father, He changed, started seeing things that weren't there, believing things that weren't true. The man from the psychiatric hospital? She nodded. One night, he decided I was an imposter, that I'd replaced his real daughter. Her hand unconsciously touched her cheek. That's when I ran. Lucy abandoned the truck, crawling into Stella's lap. Adam's phone buzzed again. The Peterson meeting reminder. I have to go, he said, standing. But please, stay. That night, he worked late in his office, trying to salvage the project presentation. The city lights blurred outside his window as he remembered Sarah's last words before the accident. Sometimes the bravest thing is just staying. His phone lit up one final time. A text from Stella. Thank you for letting us stay. Lucy smiled today, really smiled. And suddenly, the Peterson project didn't seem so important anymore. The charity gala sparkled with wealth and pretense. Adam adjusted his tie, uncomfortable in the first suit he'd worn since Sarah's funeral. The Peterson project presentation had gone adequately, enough to keep his job, barely. Now Thomas insisted he make an appearance here. Show the board you're still part of the team. He spotted Stella across the ballroom, looking transformed in a borrowed dress from the donation pile she'd been sorting at the shelter where she now volunteered. Lucy was with Robert's nurse for the evening. You didn't have to come, he'd told her earlier. I did, she'd replied. I'm tired of hiding. Now she moved through the crowd with surprising grace, helping serve drinks, her way of earning her keep, despite his protests. That's when he saw Lillian Whitmore. The renowned architect stood frozen by the champagne fountain, her glass slipping from manicured fingers to shatter on the marble floor, her eyes locked on Stella. Victoria? Lillian's whisper carried in the sudden quiet. Stella turned, color draining from her face. The serving tray trembled in her hands. I'm sorry, Stella started backing away. Victoria Marie Whitmore, don't you dare move. Lillian's voice cracked with emotion. The crowd parted as Lillian approached, her designer heels clicking against marble. Adam moved instinctively toward Stella, but Thomas caught his arm. Not here, Thomas warned. Whatever this is, not here. My baby. Lillian reached for Stella's face. My beautiful baby. Stella flinched away. You don't understand. He'll find me. Who will find you? But Lillian's face had already hardened with understanding. Your father, James, is here. The male voice cut through the murmuring crowd. A disheveled man stood in the doorway, his hospital bracelet still attached to his wrist. I'm right here. Lillian? Camera phones rose throughout the ballroom. Adam saw the society columnist from the Tribune already typing furiously on her phone. James? Lillian's voice turned to ice. You're supposed to be in treatment, and our daughter's supposed to be dead. James's laugh sent chills through the room. That's what you told me, wasn't it? That she died? That's why He pressed his hands to his temple. But I knew she was out there. Security was moving in, but too slowly. Adam reached Stella just as she bolted for the garden doors. My car's out back, he said, guiding her through the hedge maze. We'll get Lucy and… No, Stella pulled away. I won't let you destroy your life for me. The press, your job. To hell with the job. Cameras flashed behind them. Someone shouted Stella's real name. Victoria. James's voice echoed through the garden. Victoria, Daddy's here. They reached Adam's car just as the first raindrops fell. Through the rear window, he could see the chaos erupting at the gala entrance. He'll never stop, Stella whispered as they sped away. Not now. Adam's phone exploded with notifications. The story was already breaking across social media. Missing Whitmore heiress found at charity gala. We'll get Lucy, he said, taking the long way back to avoid being followed. Then we'll figure this out. There's nothing to figure out. Stella stared at her hands. I'm Victoria Whitmore. My mother is Lillian Whitmore, the architect who designed half of downtown. And my father, she closed her eyes. My father is the man who tried to kill me because voices told him I wasn't his daughter. The rain intensified as they drove through darkened streets, neither speaking, both knowing that tonight had changed everything. Back at the house, Lucy slept peacefully, unaware that her world had just exploded into headlines. The first threat arrived 3 days after the gala. A simple white envelope slipped under the door while they slept. She's not your daughter anymore. Adam found Stella in the kitchen, methodically shredding the note into tiny pieces, while Lucy played with Cheerios in her high chair. We need to go to the police, he said. And tell them what? Stella's hands wouldn't stop moving. That my mentally ill father, who just got out of a psychiatric facility, might be dangerous. They'll just tell me to file a restraining order. Adam's phone buzzed. Another email from the office. He'd been relegated to small residential projects. Time to rebuild trust, Thomas had said. The investigation into James Whitmore's release revealed a disturbing pattern. Someone had been manipulating his treatment records, ensuring his release despite clear warning signs. Your mother, Adam suggested as they pored over the documents. No, Stella. Victoria, he corrected himself, shook her head. She thought I was dead. She would have kept him locked up forever. His termination notice arrived by courier that afternoon. Public controversy, the letter cited. Image concerns. Stella found him in the study. The letter crumpled in his fist. This is my fault, she said. No, it's... A rock crashed through the window, missing Lucy's playpen by inches. Attached was another note. A father knows his true daughter. That night, they took turns watching the doors. Adam researched security systems while Stella taught Lucy to hide in the laundry room, just in case. Tell me about her, Adam said during their midnight watch. The real Victoria Whitmore. Stella smiled sadly. She died the night her father first saw demons in her face. Sometimes I wonder if she ever really existed at all. A shadow moved across the yard. Adam reached for his phone, but Stella grabbed his arm. Wait, she whispered. Look, a figure stood beneath the streetlight. Not James, but a woman. Lillian. Stella's grip tightened. I can't. You don't have to. But she was already moving toward the door. Adam followed, positioning himself between her and the street. Lillian looked smaller up close, her designer clothes replaced by simple jeans and a sweater. I didn't know, she said before anyone could speak. Victoria, baby, I swear I didn't know you were alive. He told me, her voice broke. He told me you jumped. There was blood. And your note. He wrote that note, Stella said quietly, just like he wrote all the ones he's sending now. Lillian stepped forward, then stopped as Stella tensed. Let me help, please. I have resources. Security. A car engine roared to life down the street. Headlights swept toward them. Inside, Adam ordered. Now! They barely made it through the door before the car mounted the curb, stopping inches from the porch. James stepped out, his eyes wild. Family reunion! His laugh echoed through the quiet street. How perfect. Through the window, Adam watched James reach into his jacket. The streetlight caught something metallic. Call 911, he told Lillian, moving toward the door. Adam, don't... Stella grabbed his arm. Get Lucy, he said. Use the back door. Go. Outside, James stood swaying, the knife catching moonlight. Where is she? He demanded. My real daughter? What have you done with her? Behind him, Adam heard the soft click of the back door closing. Stella and Lucy were safe. That's what mattered. James raised the knife. Tell me. In the distance, sirens began to wail. James lunged forward, the knife slicing air where Adam had stood seconds before. The porch boards creaked under their feet as Adam backed away, keeping himself between James and the door. You're hiding her, James snarled, his hospital bracelet catching the moonlight. Just like Lillian did. Inside, Adam could hear Lucy crying. The sound seemed to trigger something in James. His eyes widened, head cocking like a predator. That cry, he whispered. I know that cry. The knife came again, faster this time. Adam felt it tear his sleeve, warm blood trickling down his arm. James! Lillian's voice cut through the chaos. She stood in the doorway, hands raised. Stop this, please. You... James's attention snapped to his ex-wife. You took her from me, made her forget me. No one took her, Lillian said softly, stepping forward. You did this, the night you... Liar! The knife arced through the air. Adam tackled James, both men crashing through the porch railing. They hit the ground hard, the knife skittering away into the darkness. Inside the house, a different kind of chaos erupted. Robert's voice, suddenly strong. What's happening? Where's my son? Mr. Bennett, please, the nurse pleaded. Your heart. Dad, stay inside, Adam shouted, struggling with James in the wet grass. But Robert was already on the porch, gripping the door frame. His face contorted at the scene below. James broke free, scrambling for the knife. Finding it, he turned, not toward Adam, but toward the house, toward the baby's cries. My granddaughter, he breathed. She needs her real grandfather. Everything happened at once. Robert stepped forward, losing his balance. Stella screamed from inside. The knife flashed. Adam moved without thinking, catching his father as James charged past them both. Robert's weight bore them down. The older man's face gray with pain. "Dad! Second! Stroke!" Robert gasped. "Tell Stella! Forgive!" Inside, glass shattered. Lucy's cries turned to screams. Adam looked between his father and the house, torn between impossible choices. "Go!" Robert wheezed. "Go!" Lillian was already calling 911, kneeling beside Robert as Adam raced inside. The scene in the living room froze him. James cornered Stella and Lucy by the broken window, the knife steady in his hand. "You're not her," he told Stella. "You're not my Victoria, but this baby." He reached for Lucy. "This baby is pure, uncorrupted." "Daddy?" Stella's voice was barely a whisper. "Please." Something flickered in James's eyes. Recognition, confusion, madness. "Victoria?" "Yes." Stella stepped forward slowly, shielding Lucy. "It's me, your real daughter." "No." James pressed his hands to his temple. "No, you're tricking me. Like they all trick me." Sirens wailed in the distance. "Remember the lake house?" Stella's voice trembled. "Annie, how you taught me to skip stones. 5 skips was your record." 6, James corrected automatically. Then his face crumpled. "Victoria? My Victoria?" The knife lowered slightly. Adam inched closer. "Let me hold her," James pleaded, reaching for Lucy again. "Let me hold my granddaughter." "No!" The word burst from Stella like a gunshot. James's face transformed. "Then you're not her! Not her!" The knife rose. Adam tackled James as police burst through the door. In the chaos that followed, all Adam could focus on was Stella's face as she clutched Lucy, whispering the same words over and over. "We're leaving. We have to leave." The hospital corridor stretched endlessly before Adam, its fluorescent lights casting strange shadows. In one room, Robert lay connected to machines, his second stroke proving more devastating than the first. In another, James remained under psychiatric hold, muttering about demons and daughters. Stella sat in the waiting area, Lucy asleep in her arms. She hadn't spoken since the police left. "Victoria," Lillian approached cautiously, 2 coffee cups in hand. "We need to talk." "About what?" Stella's voice was hollow. "About how you let him convince you I was dead. About how you never looked for me." "I did look." Lillian sat heavily. "For months, until the police found blood in your room, and the note, and his confession." She stopped, hands shaking. "He was so convinced you were gone, so detailed in his description of your death, that I believed him." "You wanted to believe him," Stella corrected. "It was easier than admitting what he really was." The coffee grew cold between them, untouched. Down the hall, Robert's doctor emerged from his room. Adam stood to meet him. "Annie, the damage is extensive," the doctor said quietly. "He'll need constant care, the kind of care that costs." Adam nodded, already knowing they'd have to sell the house. When he returned to the waiting area, Stella was gone. In her place lay an envelope with his name. "She asked me to give you this," Lillian said. After she left, Adam's hands trembled as he opened it. "Dear Adam, by the time you read this, Lucy and I will be on a train. Don't try to find us. Your father needs you more than we do. And I need to find out who I am without being Victoria Whitmore, or Stella the homeless girl. You showed me kindness when the world had forgotten what kindness meant. But I can't let you destroy what's left of your life for us. Take care of your father. Rebuild your career. Find happiness again." Lucy smiled this morning. A real, full smile. "I'll always remember it was you who made that possible. Goodbye, Stella." Adam ran to the station, but he already knew it was too late. The early morning train pulled away just as he reached the platform, carrying with it the small family he'd somehow come to love. Rain began to fall, mixing with tears he hadn't realized were falling. His phone buzzed. "Thomas, the board reviewed your case," his old mentor said without preamble. "Oh, given the circumstances, there might be a way back, if you want it." Adam watched the train disappear into the distance. "I'll think about it." Back at the hospital, Lillian waited with fresh coffee and a manila envelope. "Property deeds," she explained, "to a small house on the coast. It's private, secure, perfect for rehabilitation." "I can't accept." "For Robert," she interrupted. "Let me do this. For all the times I should have done something and didn't." Through the window of Robert's room, Adam watched his father sleep. On the bedside table, a photo of Sarah smiled up at him. Next to it, He placed the toy truck Lucy had played with, its worn edges catching the morning light. The rain continued to fall, washing away the last traces of the night's chaos. While somewhere on a train heading east, a young woman held her daughter and watched the city disappear behind her. 3 years passed like turning pages in an old book. The coastal house became home, its salt-weathered walls witnessing Robert's slow but steady recovery. Adam rebuilt his career, project by project, while Lillian's quiet support opened doors he thought forever closed. Now, standing in the university auditorium, Adam adjusted his tie and checked his watch again. "She's really graduating?" Robert asked from his wheelchair, his speech still slightly slurred but clearer than it had been in years. "Top of her class," Lillian confirmed, scanning the crowd. "Architecture of all things." Adam smiled at the irony. "Have you seen her?" "Not yet." Lillian smoothed her skirt nervously. "She only contacted the department last month, asking to be allowed to give the valedictorian speech." The lights dimmed. Adam's heart stopped as Stella walked onto the stage. She looked different, stronger, more confident. Her dark hair was shorter now, professional, but her eyes still held that same quiet determination he remembered. 3 years ago, she began, her voice carrying through the hushed auditorium, "I was homeless, hiding from my past, and convinced that buildings were just places to shelter from the rain." In the front row, Lucy, now a precocious toddler, squirmed in her grandmother's lap. "But someone taught me that architecture isn't just about structures," Stella continued. "Oh, it's about creating spaces where broken things can heal, where lost people can find themselves again." Her eyes met Adam's briefly. "We talk about foundation and support, about load-bearing walls and stress points, but the strongest buildings, like the strongest people, aren't the ones that never crack. They're the ones that learn to stand despite their scars." Lillian wiped tears from her eyes as Stella spoke about family, about reconstruction, about the difference between running away and running toward something. After the ceremony, they found each other in the courtyard. Lucy ran to Adam immediately, remembering him somehow despite the years. "Uncle Adam," she called him, and his heart swelled. You look good," he told Stella, meaning so much more than those simple words. "So do you," she replied, then turned to Robert. "Both of you." "Victoria," Lillian started. "Stella," her daughter corrected gently. "Victoria was who I was born as, but Stella is who I chose to be." They had dinner together at a small restaurant near campus. Lucy drew pictures on her placemat while the adults navigated the delicate waters of reconciliation. "James is doing better," Lillian said carefully. "The new medication—" "I know," Stella interrupted. "I read your letters, all of them. I just wasn't ready to respond." "And now?" Adam asked. Stella reached into her bag, pulling out blueprints. "I have a job offer, here in the city, a firm specializing in rehabilitation centers and transition homes." "Stay," Robert said suddenly, his good hand gripping his fork. "Please." Lucy looked up from her drawing. "Can we, Mommy?" Stella met Adam's eyes across the table. "What do you think? Room for another architect in town." "Always," he said softly. Later, walking through campus under the setting sun, Stella showed Adam her final project, a design for a community center combining emergency housing with rehabilitation facilities and childcare. "It's beautiful," he said, studying the plans. "It's home," she replied, "or it will be, for someone who needs it." The evening light caught her engagement ring, a simple band she'd chosen herself. "Are you sure about this?" she asked quietly. "About us?" Adam watched Lucy chase fireflies on the lawn, her laughter echoing across the grounds. "More sure than I've been about anything," he answered. "Tomorrow would bring challenges, merging their lives, balancing careers, continuing to heal. But tonight, watching the sunset paint the buildings gold, they were just a family finding their way home." Graduation morning dawned clear and bright. Adam helped Lucy into her flower girl dress while Stella finished her valedictorian speech in the next room. "Is Mommy nervous?" Lucy asked, fidgeting with her basket. "About the speech or the wedding?" "Both," Lucy giggled. The university auditorium filled quickly. Robert sat in the front row, his wheelchair decorated with white ribbons. Beside him, Lillian dabbed at her eyes, while Thomas, now a mentor to both Adam and Stella, checked the video camera. "Ready?" Adam asked, meeting Stella at the stage door. She squeezed his hand. "More than ready." The ceremony began traditionally enough, But when Stella took the podium for her speech, she departed from the usual platitudes. "Body architecture," she began, "is the art of creating spaces for life to happen. Not just walls and windows, but moments, chances, sometimes even miracles." Her eyes found Adam's in the crowd. "3 years ago, I stood on this stage and talked about reconstruction, about how the strongest structures are built on scars. Today, I want to talk about something else. Foundation." Lucy toddled down the aisle, scattering rose petals. "Foundation isn't just what we build on, it's who we build with. The people who hold us up when our own walls are crumbling." Robert wheeled forward, carrying the rings. Every architect knows that the most important parts of a building are often invisible. The support beams, the load-bearing walls, the quiet strength that makes everything else possible. Lillian rose, taking her place beside her daughter. "Today, I'm not just receiving a degree. I'm not just getting married. I'm laying the final stone in a foundation that began on a rainy night under a coffee shop awning when a stranger stopped to help." Adam joined her on stage as she turned to face him. "Mother," Stella said, looking at Lillian, the word echoing through the auditorium like a prayer. The ceremony blended seamlessly into the wedding. Vows were exchanged between diplomas, rice mixed with graduation caps in the air. At the reception, Robert raised his good hand for attention, his speech slow but clear. "To the architect who rebuilt our family," he said, "and to the family that rebuilt me." Later, during their first dance, Stella whispered, "Look." Through the window, they could see the construction site of their first joint project, a community center for families in transition, its foundation already taking shape against the skyline. Beautiful," Adam said, but he wasn't looking at the building. Lucy danced with her grandmother, while Robert watched from his wheelchair, smiling. Even James, carefully monitored but stable on his new medication, sat quietly in a corner, holding a piece of wedding cake. "We did it," Stella said softly. "We really did it." "Did what?" "Built something stronger than our scars." The evening wound down. Guests departed. Lucy fell asleep in Robert's lap, her flower basket still clutched in tiny hands. As they prepared to leave for their honeymoon, Stella paused in the doorway, looking back at their assembled family. Broken pieces fitted together into something new and beautiful. "Ready to go home?" Adam asked. Stella smiled, taking his hand. "We are home." Outside, the first stars appeared above the city they'd helped rebuild, one foundation at a time. Their future stretched before them like an open blueprint, ready to be filled with designs only they could create together. And somewhere, in the quiet spaces between heartbeats, Sarah smiled.